Recording
by
in
assigning
progress.
the National Energy Regulator of South Africa the power to set and approve prices and tariffs as per Clause 5 of the bill. It is, in fact, the antithesis of competition. Everyone will have to conform to prices determined by NERSA. And it should be pointed out that NERSA did not want this function. In fact, they claimed they lacked the capacity to monitor and enforce it. A further concern relates to the broad powers assigned to the minister to make determinations for new or additional generation capacity. In the amended Section 34 of the Act, the minister is granted the power to deviate from the Integrated Resource Plan, the country's roadmap for electricity generation and procurement, in making these determinations in, quote, an emergency, in the national interest, or when there is a failure of the market. But none of these terms are defined in the bill, and therefore it is left to the minister to determine exactly what they are. The proposed Section 35B sets out offences and penalties in terms of the Act. One of the changes to the draft bill, which the ANC pushed through forcefully in committee, is the removal of the term willfully. In so doing, it criminalizes even accidental damage, removal, or destruction of electricity generation, transmission, and reticulation, infrastructure, cables, or equipment. What this means is that you would be guilty of a criminal act if you accidentally hit a pothole while driving down the road and crashed into a street light. The bill makes no provision for accidental damage or destruction of such property. The bill further sets the maximum penalty for a person who contravenes the provisions of the Act or who, without lawful authority, damages, removes, or destroys the equipment I've described at 5 years, at a maximum of 5 years imprisonment and or R1 million fine. But this is significantly less than a person who receives such goods from a person who they do not have reasonable cause to believe is duly authorized by the owner of those items to deal or dispose thereof. In the latter case, the penalty is set at a maximum of 10 years imprisonment and or R5 million fine. Chairperson, the Portfolio Committee had an opportunity to make good, far-reaching legislation, and as has become the norm with the ANC, they blew it. We remain concerned that the creation of a transmission system operator state-owned entity, as envisaged by the bill, does not go far enough to ensure the independence of the unbundled entity. A World Bank report from 2002 notes that a transmission system operator must be independent of the ownership and control of market participants. It goes on to state that independence is required, quote, so that the transmission system operator does not discriminate in favor of one market participant over another, end quote. The Department of Public Enterprises has previously suggested that independence is unnecessary, given the unbundling of Eskom into 3 separate entities, all housed under Eskom Holdings, and with the government as a sole shareholder. But the World Bank has a view on this too. Functional unbundling, or the idea that, quote, allows the grid operator to remain within a larger power enterprise that owns generation and transmission facilities, but tries to establish detailed conduct rules so that the grid operator will act as if it is separate, even though it really isn't, end quote, is fraught with problems. It does not work for 2 reasons. Firstly, it conflicts with the normal incentives of any commercial enterprise to try and protect the profits of its parent companies. And secondly, it is virtually impossible for the regulator to enforce the rules. It's been 17 years since the scourge of rolling blackouts was inflicted on this country. In that time, our inept ANC government has failed to meaningfully address the problem. Unless we want another 17 years of load shedding and economic stagnation, we need to get rid of them. On the 29th of May, let's vote in a government committed to providing reliable electricity to all South Africans. Let's vote for the Democratic Alliance to rescue South Africa from the dark days of ANC failure. Chairperson, despite our misgivings, it is vital that the system operator be established and the electricity sector opened up to private sector participation. The Democratic Alliance supports the bill.
The next speaker is the Honorable Maotwe.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. Chair, the EFF unapologetically and unashamedly rejects the Electricity Regulation Amendment Bill. And we call on all South Africans to reject this bill. As much as the bill was introduced by the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, we know that the irrational and corruption intentions to privatize electricity generation is driven by Mr. Godhan. The deliberate and purposeful collapse of Eskom was meant to pave the way for this bill.
Honorable member, there's a
Collapse of
point of,
electricity generation.
Honorable Mawatwe, there's a point of order. Yes, honorable member.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I'm rising on Rule 85. The members just cast aspersions on the integrity of Minister Godhan. I think it must be done through the substantive motion. Thank you.
Yes, honorable Mawatwe, you must withdraw that remark. Honorable Mawatwe, you must withdraw that remark.
Which remark, Chair?
The remark that you made pertaining to the Minister of Public Enterprises.
No, Chair, I said,
If you don't withdraw the remark, honorable member, then you must leave the platform.
no, but Chair, you don't know which remark I must withdraw. I'm
Honorable
trying to
member, you know
assist on
exactly
I
what
said.
you said, and I'm not going to repeat your unparliamentary remark.
I withdraw,
request you to
Chair. Let me
withdraw
finish
it.
my debate, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
As much as the bill was introduced by the Minister of Minerals and Energy, we know that the irrational intentions to privatize electricity generation is driven by Mr. Godhan. The deliberate and purposeful collapse of Eskom was
Honorable
meant to pave
member,
the way
I've asked
for
you
this
to
bill.
withdraw that remark and you're doing it again. Honorable member, are you withdrawing the remark or not?
Withdraw.
Please continue.
The collapse of electricity generation, the failure to maintain power stations, the inflated prices of coal purchased from Glencore and Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa's company, Shanduka, and the misguided and illegal firing of competent people from Eskom were all means to pave the way for this bill. The persistence and devastating electricity blackouts, so-called load shedding, was allowed to happen in order to pave the way for the so-called the need to open the market that allows for competitive electricity trading. Chair, the so-called competitive electricity trading is nothing but privatization of electricity generation, profiteering from what should be a foundation of rebuilding South Africa's industrial base. The nonsensical and irrational Eskom split into three separate entities is nothing but mutilation of what should be one entity responsible for dependable, affordable, and reliable electricity generation and supply. House Chair, the reality is that Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, Mr. Jamnandas Godhan, the clueless and dancing Minister of Electricity, who confuses Eskom with tourism, and the Minister of Mineral Resources and the whole of the governing party have made empty promises about resolving the electricity crisis. They told us, without any believable plan, that electricity crisis will end by December 2023. That never happened. They have now shifted the goalpost to 2025. Shame on them. After the Minister of Public Enterprises shenanigans Chair to enter into a corrupt deal with Takato to privatize SAA, we should look at everything that he does together with this government with suspicion. The reality is that we don't need to privatize electricity in South Africa. So far, the Economic Freedom Fighters is the only political party that has tabled a believable, coherent, and practical plan to solve electricity crisis. We have to ensure that there is security of electricity supply for at least the next 20 years. We have to invest in repairing existing fleet of power generation and adopt clean coal technologies to enhance the energy availability factor. We have to reduce the electricity demand of major electricity users, implementing strategies that are economically viable. This will include revoking preferential tariff deals signed with the apartheid government. House Chair, in all that we do, we must not lose sight that we have to prioritize the affordability of electricity, ensuring that energy costs continue to be sustainable so that we can revive our economy. We will commit to decarbonization of electricity sector, but we're going to maximally leverage all the coal reserves that we have as a country. We're going to be very jealous of which coal leaves our shores, how much of it, and who is buying it from us. We know that there are some with neo-colonial tendencies who want to dictate to us what electricity we must use, when and how. We're told we must decarbonize by people who themselves are dumping their adventurism of renewable energy and are going back to coal power stations. All those loans and multilateral agreements that were signed and promised to the World Bank, IMF, and the Europeans, that this bill will pass today. When we take over power in June 2024, we'll relook at each and every agreement, and anything that does not promote South Africa's interest will become. Chair will use all means necessary, including legislating against privatization of electricity generation. There is no private sector that is going to be responsible for control of South Africa's energy generation capacity, because they can easily use energy generation to give us instructions on how to run our country. Chair will wake up one day, and when we want to expropriate land without compensation, they will threaten to switch off all the electricity because they don't agree with expropriation of land without compensation. And therefore, we cannot allow privatization of the electricity in South Africa. The EFF rejects the Electricity Regulation Amendment Bill. In fact, we must correctly call it that it is the Electricity Privatization Bill. The EFF rejects this bill.
The next speaker is the Honorable Majosi.
Thank you, DTG. Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. For far too long.
House Chair.
What's happening?
Oh, we seem to have a problem. The Honorable Msimang was on the speakers list, but I was informed the Honorable Majosi is going to deliver it on behalf of the Honorable Msimang. May you proceed, Honorable Majosi?
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. For far too long, Eskom has been playing the entire field of electricity generation and supply uncontested. Unfortunately, this has led to the citizens of South Africa having to suffer under constant load shedding with no alternative service provider to turn to. Over the years, we have seen the management of Eskom deteriorating due to deeply entrenched systems of corruption, and the repercussions were billions of rands in bailouts. This has led the IFP to repeatedly call for the privatization of Eskom, as it has become a bottomless money pit funded by the hard-earned money of South African taxpayers. Therefore, while the Electricity Regulation Amendment Bill is not exactly what the IFP would have wanted, considering our country's current predicament with regards to electricity, this is certainly a step in the right direction. Once enacted, the bill will introduce much anticipated changes, such as the establishment of the Independent Transmission System Operator, which will act as a system and market operator. Crucial to the ultimate unbundling of Eskom, the bill will also establish a multi-market system that will accommodate trading of a competitive and open market platform. Our daily load shedding schedule is a clear indication that Eskom is extremely unreliable. Therefore, we cannot be trusted as the only entity to generate electricity. The IFP has always been a staunch supporter of public-private partnership. Therefore, while the bill does not privatize the electricity system, we welcome the fact that it enables private sector investment and generation to supplement Eskom's generation and meet national electricity demand. However, we would not be doing our constitutional democracy justice if we did not point out the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy lack of respect for one of the most crucial checks and balances in the democracy, which is a public participation in the legislation process. This is the bedrock of the functioning democracy, as it ensures that the voices of all stakeholders are heard and considered. Therefore, this is not a process that should be rushed and treated as an add-on to finalize legislation. We sincerely urge the department to do better in the near future. The IFP supports the bill.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable Boshoff.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Die wêreld verander vinnig en wie nie bly nie raak agter. Die era na die Tweede Wêreldoorlog was die tyd van reuse staatskorporasies wat die land se wiele aan die rol hou. Veral op die terrein van energie was die voordeel van skaal oorweldigend en kleiner eenhede moes maar op sy staan. Elektrisiteit in Suid-Afrika was geen uitsondering nie. Die land se tekort aan petroleumprodukte is gedeeltelik vergoed deur 'n oorvloed steenkool. Daarom het kragstasies veral sedert die 1960s in die Hoëveld naby steenkoolmyne opgeskiet en 'n verspreidingsnetwerk het geleidelik die hele land bereik. Een vir een het dorpe se eie kragstasies gesluit en selfs op plase het die raserige kragopwekkers stil geword. Die woord Eskom het op die platteland vooruitgang gespel, selfs sodat dit Eskom geword het. Die prys van gerief is dikwels 'n verlies aan selfstandigheid en dit is presies wat gebeur het. Nie dat dit jy saak gemaak het nie, want wie wil energie selfstandig wees as die alternatief so aantreklik is? Wel, dit is die probleem. Selfs die magtige Eskom was nie bestand teen die nuwe praktyk van vat wat jy wil, die land sal betaal nie. Gelukkig het tegnologie in die teenoorgestelde rigting ontwikkel. Terwyl Eskom verval, het die prys van fotovoltaïese panele begin daal. Sonkrag het van 'n duur opsie vir rykes of hippies verander in 'n goeie belegging. Dit het die hele mark verander. Eskom en die regering met sy liefde vir sentralisasie het aan die kragmonopolie probeer vasklou, maar op die duur kon dit nie hou nie. Trouwens, Eskom het self nie oor die bronne beskik om opwekkingsvermoë uit te bou nie en die son het goedkoper as steenkool geword. Die gevolg is dat Eskom toenemend van die privaat sektor afhanklik is om sonkrag op te wek, om dit weer te verkoop aan diegene wat nie hulle eie aanlegte opsit nie. En dit het 'n nuwe mededingende energiemark genootsaak, die onderwerp van vandag se debat. Hierdie is nie 'n slegte wet nie. As mens die 4+ 'n manifeste sedert 2016 deurwerk, sou mens dink die ANC het dit dalk gelees. Ek dink nie hulle het nie. Hulle het maar net die werklikheid raak gesien wat ons toe al beskryf het. Liewer laat as nooit. However, there is a gap in this legislation. Well, several, but I want to stress one. According to media reports, Eskom estimates its loss due to power theft as 20 billion rand per year. And yet there is no agreement in legal circles that theft of electricity is in fact a crime. Surprisingly enough, no law prohibits the stealing of electricity. Two High Court judgments disagree on the point. The one holds that it is a common law crime, while the other says that energy is intangible and that common law therefore does not apply to its theft. Whether it is a quaint question for the legal eagles to argue, but prosecution should not have to wait for an answer. We, as legislators, can and should clear it up by making a law. The bill before us creates an offensive one that damages or destroys cables or equipment used in the reticulation of electricity, or if one acquires such cables or equipment. However, to steal the electricity itself is still not an offense. The Freedom Front Plus will carry this into the select committee of the NCOP, as it should not be difficult to reach an agreement. With that qualification, we support the report.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Swart.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, Eskom's unreliable electricity supply has resulted in ongoing load shedding, which has had a devastating impact on households and businesses and on economic growth and job creation. The power crisis is caused by many different factors, including state capture and corruption, aging and underperforming power stations, financial bankruptcy, a culture of non-payment, as well as acts of sabotage and even attempted murder. The ACDP played a key role in the Eskom parliamentary inquiry, which exposed state capture and corruption at Eskom, which contributed to the grand failure of Eskom and ongoing load shedding. These findings were confirmed and amplified by the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. Now, this bill is intended to make it easier to produce and sell electricity in the country. If properly implemented, it could be a game changer, a positive step towards a more reliable, affordable, and sustainable electricity system by enabling multiple electricity producers to compete on a national playing field. This is intended to ensure that South Africa's energy security is assured and entrenched while improving efficiency and bringing down electricity prices in the long term. And this, Honourable Minister, through you, Chair, the ACDP supports. This bill is a step in the right direction as it establishes the transmission system operator, which will be managed by the National Transmission Company, an independent state-owned entity. Of course, Minister, the challenge
through you, Chair, again, is that this is another state-owned entity. And as we know in the past, if it is run by deployed cadres, we may well again see corruption, given that the TSO is managed by the National Transmission Company and will have a key role in establishing a market platform through which electricity can be bought and sold by multiple buyers and sellers. But during the public hearings, those who supported the bill said that the idea of opening the market for competitive electricity trading, where Eskom will have to compete with private companies, should be welcomed. And the ACDP welcomes and supports that aspect, as this will help the country address the challenges of electricity shortages, which cost the economy billions of rands in losses due to the unreliable power supply. However, Parliament will need to tighten its oversight responsibilities and ensure that the planned new state entities are protected from any degree of corruption, something that contributed to the collapse of Eskom. The ACDP has noted some of the reservations about the wordings and the powers assigned to the minister, as well as the issues concerning the subjective interpretation of failure of market, emergency, and national interest. But we believe, despite those reservations, this bill should be supported, and the ACDP will support this bill. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Kwankwa. The Honourable Kwankwa on the platform. Honourable Kwankwa. Honourable members, we will proceed to the next speaker, the Honourable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The National Freedom Party will support the bill tabled here today. Allow me first of all to raise some concerns, Chairperson, that in at least 1998, we were aware that we will have an energy crisis if we did not address the need for additional capacity in terms of generation. Added to that was the issue of maintenance, not forgetting the skills. Shortage, well, of course, many of those at that time, the skilled artisans that we had have actually left Eskom. But very importantly, the evergreen contracts that continue up to this very day, Chairperson. Now, these are big conglomerates that have been having these evergreen contracts. They continue to enjoy these benefits at extremely high prices. Now, something strange I picked up the other day, Chairperson. We are exporting coal, high-grade coal. But strange enough, we are importing low-grade coal. And it's the same company which is supplying Eskom. And I'm really, that's a matter for serious concern. But I think some of the measures that have been put in this bill, I think, will to a very large extent help Eskom, while there's also a matter for concern that this might make Eskom eventually redundant or may have to shut down because its expenditure will remain the same. However, its income generation capacity will be lowered. These are some of the concerns.
Honourable Sheikh Imam, it seems to me you have a problem with your connection.
Should I put off the video, Chairperson?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry for that. Should I just start again? Okay, first of all, let me raise the concern that as early as 1998, we were fully aware that we are going to reach a crisis as far as energy supply if we do not deal with further energy
The Honourable Member, you are not audible at this stage.
NFP will support this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Malinga.
My chair. Chairperson.
Honourable Kwankwa, I'll come back to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, House Chairperson. In South Africa, energy insecurity and rising electricity tariffs are compounding each other, thereby locking the country into an eco-developmental trap of permanent poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Energy security and affordable electricity prices play several important roles in the processes of inclusive development and structural transformation in the country. From a structural transformation perspective, a reliable supply of electricity enables households headed by women, as well as large and small enterprises, to engage in wider economic activities that serve as an engine of strong productivity growth required to make a significant dent in the obscene levels of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. From an inclusive development perspective, affordable electricity prices discourage illegal connections and improve the purchasing power parity of poorer households headed by women to afford necessities such as food and transport, thus making them active economic agents. Ironically, the current structure of the electricity market pulls in the opposite direction to the country's ambitious goals of inclusive development and structural transformation. The slow pace of inclusive development and structural transformation in the South African economy has renewed the momentum in the amendment of the ERA bill. Whilst estimating and quantifying the net positive effects of the ERA bill is challenging. The push for the amendment of the bill makes South Africa's need for inclusive development and structural transformation more urgent and attainable. For instance, the unbundling of Eskom, which is anchored in the ERA bill, is an attempt to shift the electricity market from current structure that forecloses competition to the one that endorses full-blown competition. In turn, a competitive electricity market may not only fill the existing generation gap and deliver electricity price reductions for poorer household and labor-intensive industries, such as agriculture and manufacturing sectors, but also encourage investment and innovations in solar, wind, and renewable technologies. For a country like South Africa, whose production is dependent on fossil fuel energy, investment in renewable technologies could place the country's exports at an acute competitive advantage in a world where critical trading partners in the European Union and the United States are beginning to impose carbon price and carbon border tax to correct environmental externalities. As such, the ERA bill increases both competitiveness as well as access to critical export markets, and in turn accelerates inclusive development and structural transformation prospects. However, encouraging investment in renewable energy technologies through the ERA bill barely suggests that the ANC-led government pursues the whatever it takes to abandon fossil fuel energy strategy, often advocated by the ignorant DA and its ideological wind, commonly known as environmental justice organizations. Unlike the DA, the ANC is not in a perpetual state of manic disorder. Hence, the ANC-led government will never relegate coal to a subordinate position in the medium term in favor of placing the supply of electricity at the mercy of weather conditions. Nonetheless, investment in renewable energy technologies is a prerequisite for an uninterrupted supply of electricity, which is critical to reversing the trend of downsizing economic activities in polluting industries, especially in mining, basic metals, and chemicals, thus saving productive capabilities and decent jobs for women. More importantly, investment in renewable energy technologies is expected to improve the stagnation of mineral beneficiation, as mining and chemical firms will be enabled to reduce their emissions relating to the processing of raw minerals and chemical materials. As it stands, Schedule 2 of the ERA bill empowers mining and chemical firms to pivot the small-scale embedded generation to enhance energy security and in turn broaden the basis for economic growth and employment creation for women. Of course, opposition parties, especially those that have a mistaken confidence that there is a nexus between wearing overalls and revolutionary consciousness, would argue that the ERA bill is prone to be captured by the private sector because its proposed reforms mirror the interests of big capital. Much of the evidence of the capture of the ERA bill, at least according to hearsay fighters, is deduced from the fact that reform gains accrue to identifiable groups and sectors. However, The cognitive framework underpinning this view is flawed and indefensible because the ERA bill attempts to redistribute gains between consumers, generators, and distributors in the proposed competitive electricity market. For illustrative purposes, Schedule 2 of the ERA bill not only empowers mining and chemical firms to shift to small-scale embedded generation, but also empowers households headed by women and public institutions to migrate away from the Eskom grid to enhance energy security and reduce dependence on the grid. More importantly, initial decision to allow such migration, for example, empowers households to resell excess energy back to the Eskom grid. Similarly, the ERA bill empowers municipalities with distributing licenses to procure electricity from cost-effective and efficient producers in the generation network. Nothing like this has ever happened before in South Africa. Therefore, the rejection of the ERA bill based on fears of capture sounds like it is not meant to make sense, gigantic South African joke. Perhaps if more impressive is that the stand objectives of the energy security and reliability, as well as quality of supply in the ERA bill, are particularly important for supporting improved education and health outcomes in a country that is desperate for a healthy and skilled labor force, especially among women. In turn, an increase in a healthy and skilled labor force presents an opportunity for South Africa's demographic dividend to reach its full potential. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable Kwankwa.
Many thanks, Chairperson. A sustainable solution to curb the electricity crisis in South Africa is long overdue. South Africa has been battling with the chronic power outages since early 2008. And if you like, nearly 20 years later, we're still facing the same problem, which has become even more severe than before. For example, only in 2023, South Africans endured more than 280 days of electrical blackouts. Indeed, the dire need for this bill to solve the problem at hand. However, the United Democratic Movement opposes any attempt on the part of the ruling party to privatize electricity supply in South Africa. Yes, we agree that indeed there needs to be a reasonable energy mix which would be able to meet the demand of South Africa's energy needs. However, for as long as the South African government and the state does not supply most of the electricity demands or energy demands of the country, we will not support that. In one of our meetings with the president of Azerbaijan, one of the things they stated was that one of the things they had to do as a country was to ensure that they have energy independence in order not to undermine their sovereignty as the country, because we run the risk if we leave the supply of energy to competitive markets and to market role players in their entirety, that they might be able to manipulate domestic events by manipulating supply or increasing prices and making energy unaffordable, especially for those who are poor. According to a 2020 study published by the University of Pretoria, 52% of South Africans, most of whom are poor, experience energy poverty. Already the cost of electricity is becoming an increasing heavy burden for many South Africans, and unfortunately, our people have to carry this burden in addition to high unemployment rate, low wages, and a stagnant economic growth. Eskom was meant, when developed, to serve the people of South Africa with affordable electricity as contained in the Constitution, not to burden them with high costs from the private sector, which puts the profit motive above everything else. The UDM will not form part of betraying the poor and ensuring that there's further marginalizations of South Africans, especially the poor. We have seen in developing countries such as the US and UK, Germany and Australia, which were faced with the same challenge, where ordinary residential energy bills have increased fivefold or even more due to private sector companies' increased tariffs based on the unexpected events such as what we see due to geopolitical issues around the world. Therefore, we cannot allow our people to actually be at the mercy of the private sector. A solution that caters for the poor, a solution that caters for the lower middle class and the working class in particular needs to be found that does not depend solely on us relying on the
Honorable
private
member,
sector to provide
your
our
time
energy.
is now expired.
Much obliged, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Matlaule.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The amendment to the ERA bill is not only a bespoke solution to multiple inadequacies and complexities in the electricity market, but also a sign that the ANC-led government can reinvent itself and self-adjust quickly and efficiently to a new wave of changes in the electricity market across the world. And therefore, any attempt to reform the electricity market that disregards what the ERA bill is proposing would likely engineer a toxic cocktail of changes that push the country into further energy insecurity and customers into energy poverty. In fact, opposition parties that seek to reject the ERA bill are either disconnected or detached from reality, since their most surprising common feature is the inability to acknowledge the inadequacies in the electricity market that the bill is designed to address. The ANC is committed to the stated objectives of the ERA bill, which include, among others, introducing an electricity market that is competitive enough to deliver electricity price reduction for the poor households, small medium enterprises, industry, agriculture and the services and mining sectors, and expanding the scope for the ethical, capable and developmental state that could accelerate a just transition to a low carbon economy. However, infrastructure investment in the generation, transmission and distribution networks of the electricity market falls behind the stated objectives of the ERA bill. South Africa, no doubt, lacks the fiscal space to self-finance the infrastructure funding gap due to the rapid rising of public debt to GDP ratio, the National Treasury's focus on fiscal discipline, and the growing public commitment to invest the lion's share of the country's limited budget in social infrastructure, especially education, health, and social security. Now, to close this infrastructure funding gap, Honorable Kwankwa, the ERA bill introduces two modalities for regulatory and financial de-risking that are aimed at making infrastructure projects in the generation, transmission, and distribution network of the electricity market investable. The bottom line is that the ERA bill reverses the regulatory and financial risks that private sectors and investors require de-risking to accelerate investment in the infrastructure projects in the electricity market. In order to prevent regulatory risks for materializing, Schedule 2 of the ERA bill, for example, removes the licensing threshold for small-scale embedded generation, thus enabling the private sector to participate in the generation of electricity without having to apply a license from the national regulator of South Africa to feed into the distribution network. Equally important, Section 34 of the ERA bill empowers the minister, something that Honorable Malam hates. It empowers the minister to decide what additional generation capacity is needed to ensure that uninterrupted optimal supply of electricity in the country is ensured. Both Schedule 2 and Section 34 of the ERA bill de-risk regulatory barriers that create uncertainty and unpredictability for private sector participation. In turn, investment in infrastructure projects in the generation and distribution network would be an inevitable outcome of the regulatory de-risking in the form of Schedule 2 and Section 34 of the ERA bill. Private sector investment in infrastructure projects in the generation and distribution network have clearly discernible effect on ESCOM and municipalities. Consider, for an example, infrastructure projects in generation capacity and distribution offer potential opportunities to address the backlog of infrastructure refurbishment and maintenance in many stations and municipalities, which remains an ongoing challenge. As such, purposeful effort to reduce regulatory uncertainty through the amendment of this bill may result in the development of infrastructure projects that are more responsive to the Energy Action Plan and the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan imperatives. Of course, neophobic and pessimistic opposition parties like the EFF are accustomed to saying the amendment bill is hardly a success story because ESCOM and municipalities stand to lose revenue from private investment in infrastructure projects in the generation and distribution network. I must clarify upfront that this simplistic view is inconsistent with the facts and therefore no objective justification exists for it. In particular, this bill empowers ESCOM and municipalities to compete aggressively with the independent power producers in the generation and distribution network. We are putting facts to our people because people stood here and speak about things that do not exist, especially in the generation network where scale economies in the renewable energy technologies are important. ESCOM and municipalities are likely to benefit, thus making this bill a profitable strategy. The ERA bill would serve as a profitable strategy because the capabilities of ESCOM and municipalities to shift towards greener practices of energy generation are not fully realized under the current uncompetitive structure of the electricity market. In other words, early mover advantages in clean energy would allow ESCOM and municipalities to find more profitable opportunities along the renewable energy technological trajectory. The bill goes a step further beyond regulatory and de-risking. It also includes financial de-risking as well. For instance, the empowerment of NERSAs to set tariffs and regulate prices and the use of power purchase agreement to procure additional generation capacity through Section 34 ministerial determination prevent financial risk from materializing, therefore leading to certainty over financial projections for investors. As stipulated in Section 15 of the ERA bill, tariff prices and PPAs must allow for the reasonable return proportionate to the risk of the licensed activity. Now, Mr. Malem, don't get hurt when we reject, it must not be personal when we reject a private member's bill because it comes from the DA. Never mind the relationship that the member you have with. It was simply not a well-thought bill. It was simply privatization, and we are not in the business of privatization. I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now invite the Honourable Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy.
Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, I think the DA must get rid of the obsession about cadre deployment. Let me tell you why. Let me give you a lesson. Because when I joined mining, my DG was a white male having matric as a highest qualification. But in the eyes of the DA, that was competence. I'm sitting in the eyes of the other competence. I'm sitting with a DG now, who is an engineer and MPA. In the eyes of the DA, that engineer, MPA, DG is cadre deployment. Don't be obsessed. The reason that you're obsessed with this thing is that you had an entity that supplies 34% of citizens, mainly white citizens. Today, that 93% of citizens of the country have access to electricity, and blacks is cadre deployment. Please get rid of the obsession. It is racist, actually. That obsession is racist. Now, let me take it further. You know, independent transmission is called the Dutch model because transmission will be a wheeler and a dealer. It will be the market of electricity, which is controlled by the state. And it's not new, it is the Dutch model. Please go and read it. Lastly, cities have a right to generate own electricity now. We have effected that reform ourselves. Any city, any town can generate own electricity. So it's not just opening private sector, it is opening competition in the electricity market. That's all that is in this bill. So don't limit it to the private sector, allow that cities and towns, everybody. The deregulation of embedded generation opens up opportunities for anybody to generate electricity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, that concludes the debate. Are there any objections to the Electricity Regulation Amendment Bill being read a second time? Are there any objections? Yes, Honourable Member.
House Chair, please note the objection of the EFF and we call for a division.
You're calling for a division. A division having been called, the bells will be rung for 5 minutes.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Honorable members, will you please take up your seats? Honorable members, the Speaker has determined that in accordance with the rules, a manual voting procedure will be used for this division. Firstly, in order to establish a quorum, I would request the table to confirm that we do have the requisite number of members physically present in the chamber and on the virtual platform to take this decision. Party whips will then be given an opportunity to confirm the number of the members present and indicate if they vote for or against the question. A member who wishes to abstain or vote against the party vote may do so by informing the chair. I've been informed that we do have a quorum. We will thus proceed. The question before the House is that the Electricity Regulation Amendment Bill be read a second time. Voting will now commence. The doors to the chamber will remain locked and members will not be allowed to enter the virtual platform until voting is concluded. Whips, you will now be requested to confirm the number of your members present in the chamber and on the virtual platform, and you must also indicate if they vote for or against the question. The ANC.
Honorable Chairperson, in the House were 27, in the Good Hope Chamber, on the virtual platform were 134. The total of 161 members of the ANC are in full support of the bill.
The DA.
Chairperson, at this point, unfortunately, I don't have the correct online. Could you please give me a moment?
Yes, I'll come back to you. The EFF.
Thank you, House Chair. Physically, we are 9, on the line, we are 25, and we are voting against the bill.
Thank you. The IFP.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. In the House, I'm 1, and online we are 7, a total of 8, all in favor of.
The FF Plus.
Thank you, House Chairperson. 1 in the House, 6 online, that is 7 voting in favor.
Thank you. The ACDP.
Thank you, House Chair. I'm trying to establish on virtual, but at this stage, it's 1 in the House voting in favor. Thank you.
The UDM. The UDM. The ATM. Good. The NFP. The AIC. Cope.
1 on virtual platform. Vote
Is that the
in
AIC?
favor. Yes,
Thank
the
you.
AIC chapters.
Cope.
1 online and support.
Thank you. The PAC.
1 chair and voting in favor.
Thank you. The Al Jama. May I go back to the DA?
Thank you, Chairperson. Present in the House 15, online 39, total of 54 in support.
Thank you. The ACDP?
One in the House voting in favor. Thank you.
So nothing has changed from your
Nothing has
side?
changed.
Thank you. Is there any member that wish to abstain or vote differently to their party? Honorable Hadebe? Honorable Hadebe, are you voting differently? Oh. Oh, you were putting up your hands.
I vote.
Thank you, honorable members. The voting session is now closed. Honorable members, the result of the division is as follows. There's 25 that voted against and 234 that voted in favor. There's no abstentions. The question is accordingly agreed to, and the secretary will read the bill a second time.
Electricity Regulation Amendment Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The secretary will read the third order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services on suspension from office of Mr HC Raath, Additional Magistrate Oberholzer, on ground of misconduct in terms of Section 13, subsection 4, paragraph A, subparagraph 1 of Magistrates Act 1993.
I now recognize the Honorable Magwanishe, the chairperson of the committee, will introduce the report.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson, ministers and deputy ministers, honorable members. The Magistrates Commission received several complaints on different occasions about Mr. Raath's conduct. There were complaints from individuals that Mr. Raath had approached them to invest money in a property development in the Ivory Coast. The complainants were aware that Mr. Raath is a magistrate and trusting him, invested large amounts of money in the scheme. Subsequently, it was found that there was no such development. Also, Mr. Raath signed an MOU with a company giving certain properties as surety, while knowing that the properties did not belong to him when he signed the documents. A prosecutor at Oberholzer filed a complaint against Mr. Raath, alleging that he had, at least on 2 occasions, referred to him using offensive and derogatory language. The commission viewed the complaints against Mr. Raath very seriously and resolved to conduct a preliminary investigation. The commission charged Mr. Raath with 6 accounts of misconduct, and the charge sheet was served on him on the 23rd of July, 2018. The misconduct inquiry began on the 17th of March, 2021, and concluded on the 29th of November, 2021. Mr. Raath was found guilty on all charges, and the presiding officer recommended that he be removed from office. The commission supported the recommendation that Mr. Raath be removed, but a minority of members believed that the commission should impose a lesser sanction. These members were then invited to submit reasons, but did not respond. On the 14th of September 2023, the commission informed the minister of its decision to recommend Mr. Raath's suspension. The minister suspended Mr. Raath from office with immediate effect on the 23rd of November 2023 and tabled his report in Parliament. In its deliberation, the committee took note of the extraordinary length of time it took to finalize this and other similar matters. The committee has met the commission to discuss the delays and will include its concerns in the legacy report. Having considered the minister's report dated 23rd November 2023 concerning the suspension from office of Mr HC Raath, additional magistrate at Oberholzer, on the ground of misconduct, the committee recommends that the National Assembly resolve not to restore Mr HC Raath to the office of magistrates. And I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I will now recognize political parties wishing to make a declaration, the opportunity to do so, and the usual times for declaration or votes will apply. The DA.
I waited today. Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, we will not repeat the details of the report already put on record by the Honorable Magwanish. From our side, it is but to repeat again our concerns regarding the very slow pace at which the Magistrates Commission process matters of complaints of misconduct. A charge sheet served in July 2018, a founding of guilt on all 6 charges already in November 2021, and only removal from office or suspension, as the Act calls it, 2 years later. And as a National Assembly playing an oversight role and a final checks and balances in respect of this system, the time has arrived for us to remark in respect of each one of these matters that that type of a delay is simply not good enough. Having said that, Jay, in terms of the merits, it's of course so, it goes without saying that public confidence in the magistracy is an essential precondition for the rule of law in our country. Similarly, integrity and honesty cannot be compartmentalized. It's either present on the part of a member of the judiciary or it is not. And in this regard, Mr. Raath has made it clear that he does not possess the necessary integrity and honesty. He's made himself guilty of the type of misconduct that ultimately leave us with no choice but not to support a restoration to office. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The EFF.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mr. Raath was appointed in 1987 as an additional magistrate at the Oberholzer in Gauteng province. He also acted as the head of the court. The commission received numerous complaints about his conduct, including enticing investments in a scam, property development in Ivory Coast, as Honorable Mangwanisha has dealt with the facts. But it's also critical that we repeat for the benefit of those who would want to hear actually what Mr. Raath has done. So the presiding officer recommended his removal from office, which the commission supported. On the 14th of September 2023, the commission informed the Justice Minister of the decision to recommend Mr. Raath's suspension, pending a resolution from Parliament, and his removal from office. So it is deeply concerning indeed that Mr. Raath's misconduct inquiry commenced a staggering 2 years and 8 months after he was charged on the 23rd of July, 2018.
Honorable Member, our apologies. May I request the NA table to remove that member from the platform? Please proceed.
Furthermore, the failure to provisional suspend Mr. Raath in accordance with Section 13(3)(a) of the Magistrate Act, despite the serious nature of the allegations against him, is alarming. The charges against Mr. Raath, including dishonesty and offensive behavior, clearly warranted a provisional suspension to uphold the integrity of the magistracy. The Commission's delay in recommending Mr. Raath's removal from office, coupled with a further delay in notifying the Justice Minister, demonstrates the lack of agency and accountability. This negligence has not only undermined public trust in the magistracy, but has also perpetuated a damaging impact on the local community's perspective or perception to integrity. It is imperative that the Magistrates Commission addresses these issues with agency and transparency so that they can restore the administration of justice. During the meeting with the commission, it was revealed that the report of Mr. Raath was inaccurate and the investigating person was unavailable, raising questions of favoritism and concealing crime by the ethics division. What happened to those officials? We asked, and who are they? We never got the responses, but we will have to follow that up. This raises serious concerns about the integrity and transparency of the Magistrates Commission. The EFF government will introduce compulsory screening and vetting of judges and magistrates every 3 years. The EFF government will ensure that all magistrates court have competent magistrates. The EFF support the report by the Portfolio Committee to the National Assembly that Mr. Raath must not be reinstated. Thanks.
Thank you. The IFP.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Judicial independence and impartiality are enshrined in our country's constitution. Section 1652 provides that, and I quote, "The courts are independent and subject only to the Constitution and the law, which they must apply impartially and without fear, favor, or prejudice," close quote. Honorable Chairperson, fraudulent and corrupt individuals have no place working as part of our country's justice system. We only have to look at the state of disarray of our state-owned enterprises are in to see the results of fraud and corruption, as it has left our country bleeding taxpayer money. Therefore, as the IFP, we condemn any and all forms of fraud and corruption displayed by any public servant, as our top priority will always be to serve in the best interest of the South African people. Honorable Chairperson, we have seen one of our former presidents taken to court over abusing the power entrusted to him for personal gain. And as a nation, we have unanimously taken a very decisive stance against corruption, regardless of who the individual is. How then can we overlook or spare an individual who should have acted as a custodian of our judicial system, but choose to do the opposite? Through his actions, Mr. Raath has demonstrated a complete and utter disregard for the oath he has taken to serve our constitutional democracy. Having been found guilty by the Magistrates Commission and recommended for suspension, as public servants who strive to uphold the rule of law, there should be no question in any of our minds on which course of action to take. The IFP therefore fully supports the committee's recommendation to suspend Mr. Raath. Thank you.
Thank you. The FF Plus.
Honorable House Chairperson, the Freedom Front Plus is in support of the recommendations of the report and thus the removal of Mr. Raath. I thank you.
Thank you. The ACDP.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the ACDP supports this report. Magistrates and all members of the judiciary must be and must give the appearance of being an example of impartiality, independence, and integrity. And what is demanded of them is something far above what is demanded of their fellow citizens. Citizens look to the courts to be just and to act equitably, and therefore they must be of the highest and above reproach. The ACDP has studied the report and the complaints that were lodged against Mr. Raath. We find one interesting aspect, and that is that there were certain members of the commission that believed a lower sanction should be imposed. Those members of the commission were invited to submit reasons, but did not respond. So we fully support the commission's findings and the committee's deliberations and its report. Of course, as other members have indicated, we share the concerns about the inordinate time that it took to finalize this matter, from the charge sheet being filed in 2018 to the finding of guilt in 2021 to the processes now with the minister into findings and then the committee reaching its finalization now in 2024. The ACDP appreciates the fact that the committee has met with the commission, and we fully support the recommendation that the next parliament looks into the issue of the delays with the Magistrates Commission finalizing its matters, bearing in mind that members of Parliament, like myself, previously served on the Magistrates Commission, but are not part of these deliberations, given that it comes to us at a later stage. The ACDP supports this report. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The UDM, the ATM, good. The NFP, the AIC.
The AIC support the report, Honourable Chair.
Thank you. COPE, the PAC,
COPE
Al-Jamaa.
supports, Chair.
That is COPE, Al-Jamaa, the ANC.
Honorable Chair, members of the executive, members of the legislature, compatriots, in the case Govender versus JSC, the Supreme Court of Appeal referenced a Canadian Supreme Court judgment that related to a Canadian judge, but that was equally applicable to South Africa. The important points out of the Canadian judgment were as follows. The judge is a pillar of the entire justice system and of the rights and freedoms which the system is designed to promote and protect, and the personal qualities, conduct, and image that a judge projects affect those of the judicial system as a whole and have a significant impact on public confidence in an effective judicial system and in democracy founded on the rule of law. Chairperson, the Magistrate Commission received complaints, as it is indicated, from individuals that Mr. Raath had approached them to invest money in property development in Ivory Coast in Gauteng province. The complaints were then introduced to Mr. Raath's brother-in-law as a potential investor. As the chairperson indicated, at the time, Mr. Raath was acting as the head of court of Oberholzer. The complainants were aware that Mr. Raath is a magistrate and invested large amounts of money in the scheme, which never existed. These allegations were such a serious nature, running a Ponzi scheme whilst a magistrate. It was inappropriate for him to continue to perform the functions of a magistrate. Chair, not only was Mr. Raath accused of dishonesty due to his involvement in a financial scam affecting members of the community of Oberholzer. The committee viewed this matter very serious, and it was inappropriate for Mr. Raath to continue to perform the functions of a magistrate. The Magistrate Commission viewed the complaints against Mr. Raath in a very serious light and resolved to conduct a preliminary investigation in terms of Regulations 26(1) of the Regulations for Judicial Officers in the lower courts, 1993. But of concerning, just like it was indicated earlier, Mr. Raath was charged, but his matter was delayed. Misconduct inquiry only commenced 2 years, 8 months later after the matter was reported to the commission. That has to be emphasized. The commission charged Mr. Raath with 6 counts, as indicated earlier, 6 counts of misconduct, and the charge sheet was served on Mr. Raath on the 23rd July 28. The misconduct inquiry commenced on 17 March 2021, almost 3 years later. This is the issue that the committee has noted and also took an initiative to visit last week Friday, the commission, the Magistrate Commission, and investigate exactly what are the problems that the Magistrate Commission is experiencing. On the 14th September 2023, the Commission informed the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services of its decision to recommend the suspension of Mr. Raath pending a resolution from Parliament and his removal from office on grounds of misconduct. On 23 November 2023, the Minister suspended Mr. Raath from office with immediate effect, pending Parliament's decision whether or not to restore him to office, and tabled his report in Parliament in terms of Section 13(4)(b) of the Magistrates Act 1993. The matter was subsequently referred to the committee for consideration and report on 29 March 23. Chairperson, it is important that judges and magistrates at all times seek to maintain, protect, and enhance the status of the judiciary. To that end, they should be sensitive to the ethical rules which govern their activities and behavior, both on and off the bench. Judicial misconduct breaks down the very fiber of what is necessary for a functional judiciary. Citizens who believe their judges and magistrates are fair and impartial. The judiciary cannot exist without the trust and confidence of the people. Judges and magistrates must, therefore, be accountable to legal and ethical standards. We urge the Magistrates Commission to attend to the grave issues of delays. It's very important in finalizing matters of such nature. Justice delayed is indeed justice denied. So ANC supports the report. Mr. Raath must be removed, must not be restored in the office. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, are there any objections to the adoption of the report of the committee, including a recommendation that Mr. HC Raath not be restored to office of magistrate? Are there any objections? No objections, agreed to. The Secretary will read the fourth order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services on provisional suspension from office of Ms R Govender, Magistrate Lenyenye, Limpopo, tabled in terms of Section 13(3)(b) of Magistrates Act 1993.
I now recognize the chairperson of the committee, the Honourable Magwanishe, who will introduce the report.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson, Ministers and Deputy Ministers, honorable members. Ms R Govender was permanently appointed as a District Court Magistrate at the Lenyenye Magistrate Court on the 1st of February 2018. The misconduct charges against Ms Govender stems from the criminal case in the State versus Mongwe Victor Mangena, in which the presiding officer, Judge Kanyaho, ordered that a copy of the judgment be forwarded to the Magistrates Commission. According to the judgment, Ms. Govender was dishonest, her behavior inappropriate, and brought the name of the magistrates into disrepute. As a result, the Commission charged Ms. Govender with misconduct on the basis that she, 1, changed the accused plea and acquitted the accused without a trial taking place. She willfully and unlawfully provided false and or incorrect statements to the reviewing judges. Ms. Govender was invited to make representations on why the Commission should not recommend her provisional suspension from office, but she did not address the issues of her possible suspension or the charges against her. In this regard, Ms. Govender elected to remain silent. In the circumstances, the Commission recommended that Ms. Govender be provisionally suspended. On the 20th of December 2023, on the advice of the Commission, the Minister decided to provisionally suspend Ms. Govender from office with immediate effect. Pending the outcome of the misconduct hearing into her fitness to hold office, and tabled his report for consideration by Parliament in terms of Section 13, subsection 3B of the Magistrates Act of 1993. Having considered the report of the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services dated 20 December 2023 and tabled in terms of Section 13, subsection 3B of the Magistrate Act of 1993 on the provisional suspension of Ms R Govender from office on the ground of misconduct, pending the outcome of a misconduct hearing into her fitness to hold the office of magistrate. The committee recommends that the National Assembly confirms Ms R Govender's provisional suspension from the office of magistrates. I thank you.
Thank you. May I now recognize parties that wish to make declaration? May I invite the DA first?
Thank you, House Chair. Let's firstly remark that this is an example of the fact that the Magistrates Commission can indeed deal with the matter expeditiously. The decision to charge Ms. Govender was only taken on the 30th of August 2023. And now in the first part of 2024, we already sit with an outcome and Parliament can deal with its oversight on the matter. So that is the type of turnaround times we believe the Magistrates Commission should strive for. Having said that, House Chair, ordinarily it is of course so that procedural errors on the part of the judiciary must be dealt with either by judicial review or appeal. And therefore, the type of misconduct here is much more than an error in law or an error in fact. And we are satisfied that this is either a staggering level of incompetence or indicates a corrupt motive. And that's the type of activity, House Chair, which can have only one effect, and that is to seriously undermine the trust and confidence of the public in the judiciary. So therefore, we are very happy to support the report of the Portfolio Committee and the recommendation to not restore Magistrate Govender to office. Thank you.
Thank you. EFF?
Ngiyathokoza Mgcinisihlalo. Ms. Govender was permanently appointed as a district court magistrate at Lenyenye Magistrate Court, Limpopo, on the 1st of February 2018. A judgment she made in the matter of S. Ms. versus Mangena was referred for special review to the Limpopo Division of the High Court by the head of the court at Lenyenye Magistrate Court. In a judgment on January 2021, the High Court identified serious gross irregularities and held that the proceedings of the case in S versus Mangena matter were not in accordance with justice. The judge found that Ms. Govender had deliberately attempted to mislead the court and manufactured evidence that did not exist. The High Court set aside the acquittal of the accused by Ms. Govender. Udirileng yena Ms. Govender. Ms. Govender uile a change charge sheet ya accused, charges the accused nele gore the allegations that she changed wa uile change pleading ya accused arle o ipona molato yena I change I dira gore hana molato. And then half a jamo Ms. Govender be ancha yena Mangena o gore hana molato. And ntwe Mr. Mangena na ifaceitse gore uile a commit sexual alleged sexual conduct. So ke rena really a portfolio committee re support really EFF gore Ms. Govender a tswele pele a be suspended ka hobane a re batle di magistrates e tshwana le bo Ms. Govender gore ba tswele pele. And issue gore if a tšea ditšhelete yena a tlo dira gore batho ba continue ba ileng dikebeka go bereka. Ntho eo a re dumelane le yona. Therefore, we support this report. Ke a leboga.
Ra leboga. IFP.
PP.
Thank you,
Honorable
Honorable
Maude,
Chairperson.
don't do that. You have no right to do that, please. IFP, proceed.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. In a country riddled with corruption, it is imperative that we must ensure that our courts are not captured. Judges and magistrates play a vital role in our society. They are endowed with the powers and privileges of carrying out some of the most important legal decisions that underpin the values as set out in our constitutional framework. There are a variety of factors that give rise to corrupt activities and create an environment conducive to corruption, and our court should not be fertile ground for any kind of corrupt goings-on. Integrity is undermined by incremental concessions and compromises made by lawyers, judges, and magistrates, and not by a single titanic incident. It is for this reason that at the very instance of impropriety, we need to hold accountable those that purport to undermine the integrity of the legal profession. The allegations leveled against Ms Govender constitute conduct that is short of the standards of integrity as set out in the Magistrates Act, and therefore should feel the full might of the law. It is for this reason that the IFP supports the recommendation of the provisional suspension of Ms R Govender from office on the grounds of misconduct, pending the outcome of a misconduct hearing into a fitness to hold the office of magistrate. I thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you. FF Plus. ACDP.
Thank you, House Chair. It is significant that in this matter, a High Court judge found that a magistrate was dishonest, her behavior inappropriate, and that her conduct had brought the name of the magistracy into disrepute. It is almost unbelievable that a magistrate would change an accused plea of guilty to not guilty and then acquit an accused without a trial taking place at all. And then to aggravate the situation, to then provide false and incorrect statements to a higher court, to a reviewing judge that gave or created the impression that in fact a full trial had taken place and that the matter was postponed for judgment whilst that had never taken place. The magistrate, Ms Govender, knew or ought to have known that she acquitted the accused without a trial taking place, and then to perpetrate that dishonesty to a higher court is absolutely deplorable. One actually wonders if other similar acts had taken place and that this was the only one that came to the knowledge of a higher reviewing court. The ACDP fully supports this report and wants to commend the Commission in this particular instance of dealing with this matter expeditiously. And we support this report, which relates to the provisional suspension of Ms. Govender. I thank you.
Thank you. The UDM? ATM? Good. NFP? AIC?
No
Cope?
declaration, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Jafta. Cope?
Support the report.
Thank you.
Support the
PAC?
report.
Thank you. PAC? Al-Jama? ANC?
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. The African National Congress rises in support of the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services. Our Constitution is founded on, amongst others, the rule of law, supremacy of the Constitution, and the multi-party system of democracy, democratic government to ensure accountability and openness. Appropriate checks and balances are an important ingredient for democracy. Checks and balances allow for the involvement or intrusion of one arm of government into another to ensure that there is no over-concentration of power. Thus, the composition of the Magistrate Commission envisages cooperation in the appointment, suspension, and removal of magistrates between all three arms of government, including other stakeholders such as the legal profession and academia. Former Chief Justice Sandile Ngobo described public confidence in the judiciary as vital to the preservation of the rule of law and ultimately to the preservation of our constitutional democracy. Justice Ngobo endorsed the famous observation that the judiciary has neither sweat nor purse, but only the confidence of the public, meaning that the public recognizes the legitimacy of judicial decisions, even if it disagrees with their content. Absent such public confidence, people may abandon the courts and resort to self-help. The more the public respects and heeds the importance of court decisions, recognizing that their content broadly reflects the moral convictions of the community, the more legitimate the courts become as an institution. Ms R Govender was permanently appointed as a district court magistrate at the Lenyenye Magistrate Court on the 1st of February, 2018. The misconduct charges preferred against Ms. Govender stem from a case where the presiding officer, Judge Khanyago, ruled that a copy of the judgment be forwarded to the Magistrate Commission for its attention. According to the judgment, Ms. Govender was dishonest, her behavior inappropriate and brought, yes, of course, this is the highest form of dishonesty, if it goes to an extent of changing the accused plea. Inappropriate and brought the name of the magistrates into serious and gross disrepute. The commission resolved to charge Ms. Govender with misconduct, and on the 30th of August 2023, served her with a charge sheet and a provisional letter of suspension dated the 24th of August 2023. Ms. Govender was charged with contravening, amongst others, the Magistrate Act of 1993, the regulations for judicial officers of the lower courts, and the Code of Judicial Conduct for Magistrates on the basis that she changed an accused plea to not guilty and acquitted the accused. This actually means that the accused pleaded guilty and the magistrate herself changed the plea to not guilty and did not only stop there, acquitted the accused. Willfully and unlawfully provided false and incorrect statements to the reviewing judges that gave a picture that shows that on the 9th September 2019, there was a full-blown trial. We're used to some meetings where credentials are cooked. This is what was a clear cooked court sitting. That was not there, it's non-existent. That on the 9th September 2019, there was a full-blown trial for the whole day. And thereafter, the matter was postponed for judgment. But did not specify to which date was the matter postponed, when in the truth, and in fact, Magistrate Govender knew or ought to have known that she acquitted the accused without a trial taking place to the prejudice of the administration of justice. The commission invited Ms. Govender to make representations as to why it should not recommend her provisional suspension from office, but she did not address the issue of a possible suspension or the charges against her. In this regard, she elected to remain silent. The commission recommended that she be provisionally suspended as the allegations against her are of such a serious nature as to make it inappropriate for her to further perform the functions of the magistrate. Following advice of the commission, on the 20th of December 2023, the minister decided to provisionally suspend Ms. R Govender from office with immediate effect, pending the outcome of the misconduct hearing into her fitness to hold office. Those entrusted with responsibility should always be mindful of what William Shakespeare said. Uneasy is the head that wears the crown. Those charged with major responsibility carry a heavy burden and should always be mindful of their conduct. The conduct of magistrates should always be beyond reproach if we are to ensure public confidence. Yes, of course, Honorable Jele, Honorable Mkwebane, and Honorable Hona, correct. There is a greater concern from the committee of the longevity of how these cases take. If you check the time period between the provisional suspension and the actual removal, there's a long period. To an extent that, through the assistance of the committee chairperson, last Friday we met with the Magistrate Commission to get to understand deeper what are the impediments that are causing these delays. And they have committed to work on the backlog. Of course, with our support and our assistance, we are going to attend to these matters because the wheels of renewal must grind across all arms of the state, even if it's in the judiciary. We don't have time to massage and hug misconduct. Thank you very much, House Chair.
Thank you. Honorable members, are there any objections to the adoption of the report of the committee, including recommendation that the provisional suspension from office of Ms. Govender, additional magistrate, be confirmed? No objections, agreed to. The secretary will read the fifth order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services on confirmation of suspension, removal from office of Mr HC Raath, Chief Magistrate Bloemfontein, on the ground of misconduct in terms of section 13 brackets 4 brackets A brackets I of Magistrate Act.
Thank you. Modula Stulo Magwanish, itlalitron.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson, honorable ministers and deputy ministers, honorable members. Following allegations of sexual assault, rape, the Magistrates Commission initiated a preliminary investigation and charges of misconduct were brought against Mr. Hing. On the advice of the Commission, the Minister provisionally suspended Mr. Hing with effect from 29 November 2017. Parliament confirmed the provisional suspension. This House on the 25th of October 2018, and the National Council of Provinces on the 13th of November 2019. The misconduct inquiry against Mr. Hing began on the 30th of October 2018. On the 8th of July 2021, Mr. Hing was found guilty, and on the 29th of November 2021, the presiding officer recommended that he be removed from office. On the 24th of December 2021, Mr. Hing submitted representations on the sanctions imposed by the presiding officer and the Commission. On the 27th of January 2022, the presiding officer indicated that she had nothing to add to her reasons and sanctions. On the 13th of October 2023, the Commission resolved to recommend that Mr. Hing be removed from office on the grounds of misconduct. Mr. Hing also instituted legal proceedings in the Free State Division of the High Court. To interdict the Commission, the Minister, the Speaker of the National Assembly, from implementing the decision of the presiding officer in the misconduct proceedings. However, the matter was struck off the roll due to its lack of urgency. On the advice of the Commission, the Minister confirmed Mr. Hing's suspension from office and tabled his report dated 2nd February 2024. The committee notes the delay in finalizing this matter and similar disciplinary matters against magistrates. It has met the Magistrates Commission to discuss its handling of disciplinary matters against magistrates and will also note this in its legacy report for the next Parliament to consider. Having considered the Minister's report dated 2nd February 2024, requesting that the National Assembly confirm the suspension / removal from office of Mr. M.D. Hing, Chief Magistrate of Bloemfontein, on the grounds of misconduct, the committee recommends that the National Assembly resolve not to restore Mr. M.D. Hing to the office of magistrate. I thank you.
Thank you. May I now allow political parties that wish to make declarations, DA?
Thank you, House Chair, honorable members. Chief Magistrate Hinka stands to be removed from office as a result of a disciplinary hearing in which he was found guilty of 2 counts of misconduct. 2 counts of misconduct followed 2 complaints of sexual assault. The elements of the 2 counts are the same as the elements required to prove rape. He was found guilty. Now, as a chief magistrate, not only does he sit in judgment of other people every day, but he has wide responsibilities over a wide area. He has been found guilty of 2 counts of what technically amounts to rape. We'll all agree that this is serious. For anybody, a chief magistrate, it's unheard of. The matter has taken far too long to come to this point, and it cannot be excused. But much worse, when the Magistrates Committee had to debate on removal from office, they were divided. There was no unanimity about whether to remove him, and in fact, half of the commissioners held that he should not be removed. Now, that is something that should concern this House deeply. After some deliberation, they then managed to get a majority to agree to remove him, but there were still people who thought that he shouldn't be removed. That's a serious problem. As a result, the Portfolio Committee visited the Commission. The visit was, in my view, not entirely satisfactory, and we'll be keeping a close eye on this matter going forward. But we certainly support the removal of Mr. Hinka.
Thank you. The EFF.
Mr. Hingwa, Chief Magistrate in Bloemfontein, Free State Province, faced sexual assault allegations. He was provisionally suspended on the 29th of November 2017, confirmed by Parliament in 2018 and 2019. He applied to review the suspension on the 23rd of January 2018, but did not proceed. The disciplinary inquiry began again 30 October 2018. The Commission closed its case on the 26th of November 2020. Mr. Hingwa was found guilty on 2 charges in July 2021. Proceedings were postponed several times due to Mr. Hingwa's illness. Mitigating factors were submitted in writing, but he did not attend the hearing on the 29th and 30th of November 2021. The presiding officer recommended sanctions after finding him guilty. The disciplinary process of Mr. Hingwa involving sexual assault charges has taken over 6 years due to ongoing postponements. Despite acknowledging the impact of COVID lockdown and Mr. Hingwa's ill health, these delays have incurred significant costs to the state, undermine the justice system integrity. Following the decision to recommend his removal from office, it took an additional 21 months for the Commission to resolve the recommendation for the Justice Minister. Partly due to disagreements within the Ethics Committee, the State Law Advisor has expressed that the Commission, not the Ethics Committee, holds the ultimate responsibility in making recommendations to the Justice Minister, leading to further delays and uncertainty. The failure of the Justice Portfolio Committee as well to monitor Mr. Hingwa's case is alarming. Due to the fact that this matter served before Parliament, I think we need to have systems put in place to continuously monitor such matters so that we also don't add to the delay, and as well to fast track the process and to make sure that there's integrity to the justice system. The only concern which has been raised after our meeting with the Commission was that apparently the victim tried several times to open a criminal case. The police never assisted the victim. They've been tossing her up and down until she approached the Magistrates Commission. As this committee, I think we will have to follow that up with the police and as well determine why the police never opened a case. And I think that needs to be addressed so that the matter can be closed properly. Therefore, as the EFF, we support the report. Thank you.
Thank you. The IFP.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. The host there seems to have disabled my video. So I don't know if you can see me, but on my side, it says your host has disabled the video.
Host,
But having
please
said,
don't do that. Host, please able that video. Proceed, Tate.
thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chairperson, once again, a case of justice delayed is justice denied. But in this case, the public have been denied justice because this particular individual has been allowed to continue being a presiding officer. However, having said that, Honorable Chairperson, South Africa stands at a critical juncture where collective efforts must be made to eradicate sexual harassment and ensure workplaces are free from discrimination and harassment. It does, however, feel regressive and seems like such a miscarriage of justice when our judges, prosecutors, magistrates, and court officials are sometimes the perpetrators of such sexual misconduct and harassment. The testimonies brought before the committee paint a harrowing picture of a justice system that has failed to protect its citizens. It is unacceptable that the complainant was subjected to being sent from, as they, to quote, pillar to post by police officials who callously refused to open a case. Such negligence and disregard for the plight of survivors must be met with the full force of accountability. And I agree with the last speaker that it needs to be investigated. It remains outrageous that after the accusation of rape, Chief Magistrate Hinga is still expected to sit on the bench. It is indicative of the brazenness and unmitigated audacity of men in his position. Recent studies and trends from the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation, and Arbitration reveal a disturbing increase in sexual harassment cases across both the private and public sectors. This data sheds light on the alarming prevalence of sexual harassment within our workplaces, highlighting a systemic issue that demands immediate attention. Honorable Chairperson, it is imperative to recognize that sexual harassment knows no boundaries. It affects individuals irrespective of gender, age, or position within an organization. Furthermore, it perpetuates power imbalances, reinforcing inequalities and hindering career growth and personal development. The very fabric of our society is frayed when individuals are subjected to such abuse in their places of work. Our laws regarding sexual harassment are deeply rooted in the principles of our Constitution, where gender equality and human dignity form the bedrock of our legal framework. However, laws alone are not enough.
Of sexual assault, of rape, where the victim tried to lay charges at police stations and was sent from pillar to post, and one then appreciates the influence that a magistrate has, but in this case, a chief magistrate of the whole metro of Bloemfontein. And it is disgraceful that police would not accept that complaint because it related to a chief magistrate. The question arises for us as the ACDP, how much more is this taking place in our nation? Where complainants, vulnerable women, wish to lay charges against influential people, and they are not able to do so because of the possible repercussions. I fully agree that this matter that has taken so long to resolve needs to be monitored. I fully agree that in future, when a matter comes to us for a provisional issue, we need to continue to monitor it. But this is a classic case of the Stalingrad tactic of going to court for postponements. And even as we speak, there is a pending High Court application against the Commission, against the Speaker of Parliament. But at the end of the day, one has to think of the victim in the situation, that she has waited almost 8 years for the magistrate to be dealt with in terms of removal from office where he has had a full salary. But to date, she's had no justice. No justice. Her criminal case, there's nothing on the indication of the reports that a criminal case was ever reported. And I would agree that IPID needs to look into this. She resorted to approaching the minister. There's no information before us that there's any criminal case being investigated against this chief magistrate. That to me is absolutely disgraceful and indicates the dysfunctionality in our criminal justice system when a high-level chief magistrate commits these deeds that is now been found guilty of in a disciplinary action and then escapes the criminal justice system itself. The ACDP fully supports this recommendation, I think.
Thank you. UDM, ATM, good, NFP, AIC, COPE, PAC, Al-Jama, ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. Members of the Executive, members of the House. The late Chief Justice Ismail Mohammed once remarked that the ultimate power of the court must rest on the esteem in which the judiciary is held within the psyche and soul of the nation, in the confidence it enjoys within the hearts and minds of the potential litigants. Chair, for the nation to have confidence in the judiciary, it is fundamental that the magistrate remains independent and accountable. Magistrate courts are generally accessible to the poor and most vulnerable in society. People rely on magistrates to dispense justice accordingly, as courts are the final arbiters of disputes. The conduct of a magistrate should be beyond reproach, both on and off the bench. The conduct of magistrate should be commensurate with esteemed office which they occupy. A high standard of ethical and moral conduct is expected from magistrate. Conduct which tarnishes the good name, dignity, and esteem of the office of the magistrate and the administration of justice should not be accepted. Society should have faith in the courts and those dispensing justice. Allegations of sexual misconduct were preferred against Mr. M.D. Hinga, a chief magistrate in Bloemfontein. The complainant had tried to report the matter at different police stations, but was unsuccessful. At the last resort, the complainant lodged a complaint to the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services. The matter was referred to the Magistrate Commission. Based on the evidence gathered in the preliminary investigations, Mr. Hinga was charged with 2 counts of misconduct. On the advice of the Commission, the Minister provisionally suspended Mr. Hinga with effect from the 29th of November 2017. Both Houses of Parliament confirmed the suspension. The National Assembly resolved to confirm the provisional suspension on the 25th of October 2018 and the National Council of Provinces on the 13th of November 2019. On the 23rd January 2018, Mr. Hinga applied for an order to review and set aside the Minister's provisional suspension. The Commission's decision to institute a disciplinary or misconduct inquiry against him and declaring the disciplinary inquiry on the misconduct charges against him invalid and unlawful. The application was opposed by Mr. Hinga, but did not proceed further with the application. House Chair, the misconduct inquiry against Mr. Hinga began on the 30th of October 2018. The Commission closed this case on the 26th of November 2020. Mr. Hinga chose not to testify or call any witnesses in this defense and closed his case. After numerous postponements, Mr. Hinga was found guilty on both charges. On the 13th of October 2023, having considered all the relevant documentation, the Commission resolved to recommend that Mr. Hinga be removed from office on the ground of misconduct. This was alluded by the Portfolio Chair. Mr. Hinga instituted legal proceedings in the Free State Division of the High Court to interdict the Commission, the Minister, and the Speaker of the National Assembly from implementing the decision of the presiding officer in the misconduct proceedings. On the 20th of December 2023, the matter was struck from the roll due to its lack of agency. House Chair, in the case of Shabalala versus the state and Nduli versus the state, the Constitutional Court made the following remarks. Open quote, rape is a very serious offense, constituting as it does a humiliating, degrading and brutal invasion of the privacy, the dignity of the person or a victim, the rise to dignity, to privacy, and the integrity of every person are basic to the ethos of the Constitution and to any defensible civilization. Women in this country are entitled to the protection of these rights. They have a legitimate claim to walk peacefully on the streets, to enjoy their shopping and their entertainment, to go and come from work, and to enjoy the peace and tranquility of their homes without any fear. The oppressions and the insecurity which constantly diminishes the quality and enjoyment of their lives. Close quote. House Chair, the charges leveled against Chief Magistrate Hinga are so serious that to continue having him as a member of the magistrate would simply be unjustifiable and could be translated as condoning of wrongdoings. Justice must not only be done, but it must also be seen to be done. The justice delayed in processing this matter is indeed justice denied, as alluded by Honorable Swart. This matter must now be concluded. It has taken far too long. It would not be in the interest of justice to have such a magistrate presiding over cases when there is a cloud hanging over his head, especially a serious case of rape. Not when we are still trying to fight the scourge of gender-based violence. But let's clarify something. This matter was brought to the committee on the 2nd of February 2024. Therefore, the assertions of Honorable Mkhwebane are not correct. And I agree that this matter indeed has taken far too long and it should be addressed, especially when we are dealing with the scourge of gender-based violence that relates to rape. House Chair, the ANC supports this report.
Thank you. Thank you, all the honorable members. Are there any objections to the adoption of the report of the committee, including the recommendation that Mr. M.D. Hinga not be restored to office of magistrate? No objections agreed to. We'll have the secretary to read the last order.
Justice and Correctional Services on draft amendments to directives submitted to Parliament for approval in terms of the Child Justice Act 2008.
Gape ke bitsa modulasetulo wa komiti a re fe ditaba.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Section 97 of the Child Justice Act of 2008 provides that the National Director of Public Prosecutions, in consultation with the Minister, must issue directives. These directives assist the NPA to ensure that effective implementation of the Act and provides for a range of matters, including the withdrawal of cases, criminal capacity, diversion of matters, and trial. The first directives were published on the 31st of March, 2010. The amendments to the directives are necessary to bring them in line with the recent amendments to the Act, particularly the change to the age of criminal capacity, which increased from 10 to 12 years old. Having considered the draft amendments to directives submitted for approval in terms of Section 97 of the Child Justice Act of 2008, the committee recommends that the National Assembly approve them, and I thank you.
Honorable Memezi nomnesivakashi sakho lapho cimani. Thank you, Honorable Magwanishe. May I now recognize political parties that wish to make declarations, starting with the DA.
Thank you, House Chair. We support
Okay, thank you. Draft amendments. Thank you, EFF.
Yeah, apology, Chairperson.
No
I
problem.
thought I will have 2 minutes to come to the stage. I think it's very critical for us to share the information because we are addressing the public. In support of the Child Justice Amendment Act, as per section 97(4) of the Act, the National Director of Public Prosecutions has issued directives in accordance with the Act. These directives and subsequent amendments have been submitted to Parliament and gazetted as required by the Act. Section 97(4) of the Act as amended mandates that the amendments be forwarded to a cabinet member responsible for administration of justice for submission to Parliament before publication in the Gazette. Further, the NPA has amended the directives in line with the Child Justice Amendment Act, Act 28 of 2019. Therefore, Chairperson, these amendments are crucial in ensuring the effective implementation of the Child Justice Act and in safeguarding the rights and well-being of children within the justice system. They reflect the commitment to upholding the principles of justice, fairness, and protection of minors in line with the international standards and best practice. Therefore, we fully support the amendment made in accordance with the Child Justice Amendment Act and affirm their importance in promoting a more just and child-friendly justice system. Thank you.
Thank you. IFP.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. Criminal responsibility and incapacity have been a topic of debate worldwide. It is widely accepted that children should not be subjected to the criminal justice system unless necessary. In terms of South African criminal law, the previous Dolin Capex presumption left the assessment of a child's maturity and criminal responsibility to the court. This led to inconsistency, confusion, and possibly bias and discrimination against the minor accused. When turning to our jurisprudence in such matters, it has also been noted that the more severe the offense, the less likely the child's criminal capacity is considered. If the child is young, this is especially true when the child pleads guilty and has legal representation. Thus, Dolly in Capex did not provide the required protection in such instances. To address these concerns, and with the interest of our children being paramount of our laws, directives have been submitted to Parliament for approval under the Child Justice Act. These directives aim to improve the implementation and prosecutorial effectiveness of the Act by providing greater clarity on matters such as withdrawal of cases, criminal capacity diversions, and matters of trial. The IFP supports the draft amendment to the directives and the committee's recommendation that they be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. FF Plus.
Thank you, House Chairperson. The FF Plus supports the draft amendments and the report.
Thank you. ACGP.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the ACDP supports the concept of restorative justice, which is at the heart of the Child Justice Act, particularly when dealing with children who are not a danger to society. And we played a key role in the finalizing of this act in 2008, which incorporates this concept. And this is after we represented the country at an ancillary meeting of the United Nations discussing restorative justice as an option. And this followed this act. Now, what do we mean by restorative justice? Restorative justice is an approach to justice that involves the child offender, the victim, the families concerned, and community members to collectively identify and address harms, needs, obligations by the child accepting responsibility, making restitution, and taking measures to prevent a recurrence and promoting reconciliation. And this is very, very commendable. Some people will say it is weak on justice. No, most definitely not. It is premised on the acceptance of responsibility. Why? when a child might steal a loaf of bread because that child is hungry, should that child be incarcerated and raped and abused into a lifetime of crime through criminal gangsters? And that is the essence of restorative justice. Now, one of the aspects that is involved in restorative justice is diversion options, which, where possible, impart skills. And the restorative justice element is based on indigenous legal systems, South Africa's indigenous legal systems, healing relationships, including the relationship with the victim, and includes an element where the child understands the impact of the behavior and includes the victim. It's victim-centered. So we believe that restorative justice programs can be more broadly used and have been used efficiently when you have family group conferences, victim offender mediation, and restitution to victims. In many cases, a child justice court may find that the child is a child in need of care. And I remember specifically when we were finalizing this act, how it was important to have a probation officer's social worker's report. Why is that child committing crime? So that can be attended to. So the ACDP supports this report, amending the directives. But lastly, we want to issue a warning for those adults that use children to commit crimes. That in itself is a severe crime, and we believe they should meet the full force of the law. Let us be reminded of Matthew 18, verse 16. If anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a large millstone hung around his neck and be allowed to drown in the depths of the sea. That is how serious this is considered. The ACDP supports this report. I thank you.
Amen. Thank you. UDM? ATM? Good. NFP? AIC? COPE?
We support the report.
Thank you. PAC? Al-Jama? The ANC?
Honorable Chairperson, members of the Executive and the Legislature, comrades, friends on different platforms, good day. The African National Congress rises in support of the draft amendments to the directives in terms of the Child Justice Act 2008 Amendment of Regulations. This year marks 30 years of democracy, and the month of March is regarded as Human Rights Month. As the sixth administration draws to an end, it is important that we remind ourselves of the great efforts of this ANC government. The freedom we enjoy today did not fall from the sky. It came as a result of great effort, blood, sweat, and tears. Much work has been done by this government. Progressive legislation has been passed by this parliament, and government continues to implement same. Services have been and continue to be delivered to people, especially the poor and vulnerable. Strong state institutions have been established. We have a vibrant democracy. The examples of what has been achieved are insurmountable. One of our greatest achievements in this democracy is the adoption of our world-acclaimed Constitution, which guarantees our freedoms and 3 generations of human rights, inclusive, of course, of the rights of children. Chairperson, it is often said that children are the soul of our society, and if we fail them, then we have failed as a society. Our common law prescribes that the child's best interest must determine the outcome when a court has to make an order regarding a child. The Bill of Rights in the South African Constitution is renowned for its extensive commitment to the protection of the rights of children. in Section 28, particularly Section 28(2), which emphatically underscores the paramountcy of the child's best interest. While envisaging the limitation of fundamental rights in certain circumstances, the Constitution emphasizes children's best interest. It singles them out for special protection, affording children in conflict with the law specific safeguards. Our Constitution acknowledges that children in conflict with the law must not be subjected to practices that could endanger their well-being, physical or mental health, or spiritual, moral, or social development. The Child Justice Act 75 of 2008 seeks to establish a criminal justice system for children who are in conflict with the law and are accused of committing offenses in accordance with the values underpinning the Constitution and international obligations of the Republic. Among others, the Act seeks to provide a mechanism for dealing with children who lack criminal capacity outside the criminal justice system. Section 97(4)(a) of the Act provides that the National Director of Public Prosecutions, in consultation with the Minister, must issue directives. Section 97(4)(b) of the Act provides that the directives must be submitted to Parliament for approval before publication in the Gazette. The first directives were submitted to Parliament so as to assist the NPA to ensure the effective implementation of the Child Justice Act and to provide for a range of matters, including withdrawal of cases, criminal capacity, diversion of matters, and trial. The NPA amended the directives to bring them in line with the amendments to the Act, particularly the change to the age of criminal capacity of a child, which has increased from 10 years to 12 years old, as well as some additional amendments. I wish to end off with a quote by our former first democratically elected President, Tata Nelson Mandela. Our children are the rock on which our future will be built, our greatest asset as a nation. They will be leaders of our country, the creators of our national wealth, who care for and protect our people. The ANC supports this report. I thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Order, honorable members, are there any objections to the approval of the draft amendments to directive as it appears on the order paper? No objections agreed to. Honorable members, may I request you to stand and wait for the chair and the maids to leave the chamber? That concludes the business of the day, and this house is adjourned. Thank you.